Yo, what's good? My name's Kang, and today we're going to be doing some budgeting. This is a series where I break down my month-to-month expenses in order to provide some transparency and also give you guys an accountability partner if you want to start budgeting yourself. So this is my budgeting spreadsheet. To be honest, you don't have to make it as complicated as this. You can use whatever spreadsheet you want or even use an app like Mint or YNAB. I think the main idea is to just start tracking your expenses so that you can start pulling data from it. So the first thing I do at the end of the month is go over all my transactions just to make sure that I, didn't miss anything. So the easiest way that I found to do this was just to open up, my transactions tab on this page, and then I'll have my expense tracker up on the second page, and then I will have all my expenses on my phone, which I will go through and just to make sure that, I didn't miss anything. So I'm gonna do it really quick. Okay, so here we see all of my transactions. So these are my expenses, my investments, and my income. So right now I'll go over just my income just to make sure that I'm getting, paid properly. So yeah, so looking over the income, everything looks good. I get the 2 pay periods. So now I'm going over all my investments for the month just to make sure that I have everything lined up, which looking at it, I forgot to put in my investments from work. So I'm gonna do it really quickly. All right, so now that I finished up making sure that my investments all look okay, what I like to do now is go through my expenses just to make sure everything lines up correctly. So now that I'm done actually going through all my data, I can go back to the monthly budget and actually draw conclusions or draw trends from that data. So this is the monthly budget page, and I get the majority of my insight from, this page, just looking at all the different transactions and stuff, like the totals. The math in some of this could be a bit wonky, so if it looks weird, just ignore it because I made the sheet a long time ago and, it's not very good. So the most important thing I want to look at right here is, the planned versus the actual expenses. So you can see this month, I did not do a good job. So I planned $2,500 for the whole month, and I spent just a tad over $4,000. Like I said before, a lot of that was reimbursable. So as we can see here, $1,000 was reimbursable. So if we knock $1,000 off that $4,000, we're like, 3,000 something. So that's still definitely over my budget by about $500. But now we can see why. So going over the differences in where I spent a lot of money. So this month we can see I spent a lot of money on groceries. Good reason for that. I went to Costco, and when you go to Costco, you spend a lot of money. So pro tip, go to Costco, spend a lot of money, and then you don't have to spend money next month on groceries because my freezer is full of meat now. So the next category I went over this month was transportation. So I spent an extra $63, mostly because I rented a car with my friend. But normally I don't spend that much in transportation. I get a free transit card through work, which lets me basically go anywhere in the city, which is awesome. I love it. And because of that, my transit cost is very low. I spent $0 on clothes this month because I have no drip. That's okay. I went over in restaurants by $72. So I initially budgeted $50. And if we're going to be honest, that's a little bit unrealistic, I think. The way that I like to look at it is between restaurants and fast food. I don't want to spend like more than 100. So as long as these two cancel out and I'm spending like 100 in total, I'm okay with that. In this circumstance, I spent $150, so I'm $50 over my total budget there, which is not good. So maybe I won't be eating out next month. Next one, alcohol. I spent $0 this month, surprisingly. Okay, so next we have gym. I spent $43 in the gym, $40 I rented some skis, and then another $3 was a pickup volleyball game. Next up, we have miscellaneous. Normally, I allot myself $100 just for random stuff that I buy, which I think is pretty good. This month I went over it. I spent 136 over. So let's see what that actually is. Miscellaneous. Okay. All right. So this month we can see I got a new keyboard. I'm not going to lift it up because it's here, but trust me, I got a new keyboard. My old one broke. I got a new phone. So I don't know if you watched the last video. I said I was going to trade in my old phone for a new iPhone. So 13 Pro, and I had to pay tax on it. Screen protector and stuff with the phone, which I don't think a lot of people factor in when they buy phones. Okay, so next up we have school. So here it says 0, but in reality I know it's $150. So at the beginning of the year, I just put all the money that I would need in order to pay off my loan in a Canadian bank account so that it can automatically be taken from there. I don't know how much the total is whatever 150 times 12 is. That's just sitting in the account taken away. You're probably asking, Kang, why didn't you just, transfer it over every single month so that you can have that money? Answer is, I'm lazy. I don't want to think about it. Another question you probably have, why don't you pay the loan from your American bank account? I can't. I don't know how to. All right, next up, reimbursable. Okay, so like I said before, this is going to get reimbursed through work, hopefully. So one really quick thing I want to point out is that I got an American Express this month and I put it under reimbursable, but I think there's good reason for that. The sign-on offer that I got was 75,000 points after you spend $4,000 within 6 months with the Amex Gold, which I think is very doable under my normal, spending habits. I think that these types of reward cards can be really great, just as long as you're not basically spending money to get the bonus, right? And I think that's where a lot of people fall into in the trap of, I got to get the points and blah, blah, blah. For my personal spending, I think that I'll probably be able to hit the $6,000 limit. The $4,000 limit. So the reason that I put it under reimbursable is that every single month, Amex will give you a $10 Uber credit So this can be either the actual ride Uber or Uber Eats credit. It will also give you a Grubhub, Cheesecake Factory, and Shake Shack credit, which is another $10. So if you use both of those every single month, it ends up being $240 and essentially cancels out the membership fee. But it's only if you use them, right? So I think it works for me specifically for fast food. You know, when I looked over last year's data, I can see that I spent a lot on fast food. So if I can knock $20 off each month and get that 75,000 membership points bonus, it's a pretty good deal in my book. But again, that's only because I will actually use it. And I think if you're not going to use it, it does not make sense to get the card. So like I said earlier, I got a new phone. Just the tax was around $100. And then on top of that, my plan went from $35 or something like that to $38 or $37. And also this plan will lock me in for 3 years. But considering that, you know, the iPhones are so good now, I don't really see a need to upgrade within 3 years, hopefully. And one last thing about the phone bill. I know it doesn't look like I paid for the bill yet, but I'm probably going to have to pay my friend the whole entire year just to make it easier for him. He hasn't gotten billed yet, so I'm going to do that when he gets billed. Okay, so moving on to travel, we have $103.15 for a plane ticket to Hawaii. So I'm going to Hawaii next month, and this ticket cost looks very low, but that's because I had a voucher with Alaska Air, so I don't think it's super representative of the actual cost. I think the actual flight was around $400 or $350, depending on, like, you know, if you get like the saver fare or whatever. So I could have used that voucher to go home or something like that, but, you know, I just didn't want to hold on to it for that long, and my friend wanted to go to Hawaii, so like, whatever, we're going to Hawaii. Okay, so now we go to income. This should be a little bit more interesting than the expenses. So this $125 was paid back to me from my friends, which should cancel out some of the reimbursable that I have over there. So what's more interesting to talk about is my paycheck, which is $1,500. So just as a quick refresher, I work as a software engineer in Seattle and I make around $110,000. So that salary and this pay don't match up, but there's a reason for that, which is in the investment section. So the reason that my paycheck is so low in comparison to my salary is because I'm using all the money to front load my 401k in order to hit the contribution limit and, you know, get that match as fast as possible. My work has a very generous matching plan where they match 50% of all the dollars that I invest up to the limit. So it's a really great opportunity for me to get, you know, the ball rolling, especially since I moved to the States and I basically started from nothing. So this month I invested $600 into Bitcoin and Ethereum split in the middle. So 300. I have a recurring deposit every week, which is $50 for both of them. And, you know, I don't know how it ended up being 600. I guess I must have miscounted last month, or this month had a lot of, you know, Mondays or something like that. And finally, we have the employee stock purchasing plan, which is around $1,400 a month. Another thing that I like to do is go back and look at the previous month just to, you know, check at a quick glance to see how I'm doing, which we can do, but it's not really that useful because that month I was in Canada and, you know, there's nothing to really go on. So this is kind of like the baseline for the months going forward. One thing that I want to know is the way that I budget is not necessarily like I have to be under each amount every single month, is that I do it throughout the whole entire year. So for example, this month I spent $300 in groceries, $365 in groceries, sorry. Next month, I'm definitely not going to spend as much because I have a freezer full of meat now, so I just basically have to buy vegetables, which is a lot cheaper. So next month, I do know that I'm going to Hawaii, so I'm going to spend less on the restaurants and the fast food categories so that I can accommodate for that when I go to Hawaii. Another category is miscellaneous. To be completely honest with you, I normally spend around 100, if not more, each month on miscellaneous. I'm definitely going to have to find a way to bring this down going forward. You know, this $100 extra was for the phone, which I won't have to do again, obviously. But I will be going to Hawaii, so, you know, that's another expense right there. So another thing you might notice is that this $1,500 does not match the $4,000 of expenses. And you might be asking like, okay, so how is this guy living? How are you paying for that? Which is a fair question. So when I got hired, I got a signing bonus and I got a relocation bonus. So with the sign-on bonus and the relocation bonus that I got through work, I put some aside for an emergency fund. And the rest of it, I basically held as a cash buffer to allow me to invest into my 401k really aggressively last year and this year. So once I'm done front loading my 401k, I'm definitely going to dial back those contributions so that I can stop, you know, basically siphoning money from myself and then start to, you know, even out how much I spend and how much I get paid. But for now, this is basically what's keeping me afloat. And I actually think it's a pretty good idea for software engineers to do this, but I'll get into that in another video. Okay, so one thing that you may have noticed is that I don't go over my investments. And the reason for that is because stock market is doing so bad right now, I don't want to look at it and, you know, give myself more stress. Like I already know it's doing badly. So why would I open it up to see that I'm down like, I don't know, like 20, 30%? There's no point, right? And what's great about the setup that I currently have is that my 401k and my employee stock purchasing plan is automatically taken out of my paycheck and automatically invested. So I don't really have to actually buy anything or do anything. It just happens behind the scenes. I actually don't plan to sell my investments for another 10 years. So I don't actually mind looking at my portfolio and then doing the buys and stuff. But if they're already doing it for me, why would I, you know, open the app just to look at money that I can't even use for another 10 years? So the way that I see it is that as long as I'm investing, there's no point looking at the portfolio. Another thing that you may be wondering is why I manually track all my expenses. And I actually think this is a lot better than Mint or YNAB personally. I'm biased, obviously, because you actually get to see what you're putting down. So with Mint and stuff like that, or even looking through your phone, I feel that sometimes there's, transactions that I just don't remember what I did. I don't know what this $4 or whatever is, and it takes me a while to remember. But when I do it right away and I have these notes that I write, I can see, okay, this is exactly what it is, or okay, I paid this much and someone's going to pay me back this much. It's going to cancel each other out. And for me, it's a lot less work than having to comb through my transactions each month on something like Mint. And I get that this is definitely not for everybody, but if you see this spreadsheet and maybe you want to try it out, you can watch this video right here where I go over my budgeting spreadsheet.